The Morning Majority on 630.
WMAL.
8:07 on a Monday morning in Washington. This is the Morning Majority. Brian Neiman, Tony Blankley in the house this morning. Tucker Carlson, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, joins us now. Even though it's April 18th, this is the last day to file your income tax returns. Tucker, are you a TurboTax guy, or do you farm it out?
Are you kidding? I'd be in prison right now. Not there's anything wrong with the product. I'm just not capable of handling it.
Right.
Way over my head.
I agree. I farm it out. I may give it a try next year. But, we always hear the cliche, we need to simplify the tax code. I mean, how many times have you heard that this year alone, let alone for the last 20 years?
They could never get it simple enough for me. My father was a CPA. He did it, and then I hired one after that.
My preferred method of simplicity is just not paying. So, for the record, I do pay every year, and I wouldn't if it were up to me. So, just to keep the felonies at bay. And also, who wants to be in a bad mood for the rest of the year?
That's true. Well, but let me ask you: do you think you'll ever see a simplified tax code in your lifetime?
Of course not. If there was a simplified, well, first of all, real estate values in my neighborhood and yours would tank, would bottom out if we ever simplified the tax code, because everyone in D.C. would be unemployed. Right? I mean, you would
make
have
a lot of money off that stuff. Absolutely.
You would have foreclosure after foreclosure. I mean, do you know anyone who lives here who isn't making money from the tax code in one way or another, or attempting to influence the tax code in one way or another? Of course. I mean, that's what we do. That's the whole point of Washington. Every person who lives here, pretty much.
Well, Tucker, you're right. I think Fairfax and Montgomery counties have some of the best real estate markets in a bad nation of real estate, precisely because we're all sucking off the government teat here.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you got rid of the parasites, the whole place would collapse. It would become what it was 200 years ago. A malaria-filled swamp.
Well, it is a malaria-filled swamp. It's just intellectually a malaria-filled swamp.
Right. So, for the sake of Washington, D.C., I hope the tax code remains as complex and unfair as possible, which it is.
Yeah, it is. All right, Donald Trump, everybody's been talking about him for weeks now, if not months, and, he's doing pretty well in the polls. But I get the sense that, people are starting to turn on him, at least in the Republican Party. Mark Levin savaged him the other night, and people on the blog are saying, Trump is not a conservative. Do you think he's still on the rise, or is he ripe for a fall?
Well, I mean, I talk about peaking too early. I mean, it's April of 2011. We're moving toward a November of 2012 election. So, of course, I mean, Trump's not going to be the nominee, and this is, I don't think there's anything wrong with it necessarily. It's kind of amusing. It's, great for those of us in the media business. But does anybody really think that failing to get the Republican nomination, Trump's going to spend his own money to run third party? I mean, right? I mean, that presupposes, deep, passionate, personal belief on his part.
Right. That's why
you question his sincerity, Tucker.
I don't. Actually, I think he's sincerely committed to marketing himself.
Okay.
I think that's why he created Trump Vodka. I think that's why he created Trump the Fragrance. I think that's why he's...
That was never a good idea, Trump the Fragrance.
No. Actually, I got to be honest, I don't know if there is a Trump the Fragrance.
Well, there should have been, so we could say something rude about it.
There is a Trump Vodka.
Really?
Yeah, and I haven't had... I mean, it's just grain, alcohol, and water like all vodkas, but I think it's got a little hint of New Jersey in there, too.
He is as sincere as his hair, I guess some people would say.
Though his hair is real, by the way.
You think so?
It is.
I've
talked to him about it. I've seen it up close. I'm positive it's real. It's just, I mean, it's obviously gravity defying. It's got massive amounts of product and probably a superstructure underneath it just to hold it in place, but it's technically it's his.
I think you would have to run your fingers through the hair before you could tell if it was really real or not. I don't think you want to do that.
Well, speaking of, this is actually, I was dismissive of Trump from the very beginning, but a friend of mine was just with him this weekend and said that he shook hands with him.
Oh my goodness,
times.
He doesn't shake hands.
No, he despises human contact, as you know, unless it's with younger foreign-born women to whom he's married. So
can we get some details on that, Tucker?
That's a sign to me that he's sincere. If he's willing to touch other human beings, he's not kidding around. I mean, these are the big guns here.
Yeah, I've always felt, though, he doesn't want to tap into his own personal wealth, and he's never going to go out and campaign because it's just too much work for him to do that. That's why I don't think he'll actually run for the Republican nominee, and I definitely don't think he'll run as an independent as well.
No, I don't think he will. But it does tell you something kind of interesting. It tells you that this race, from the Republican point of view, is about Obama. I mean, why is Trump this high in the polls? Yeah, he's famous, of course. A lot of people watch NBC in primetime, I guess, more than we thought. But mostly he's made this all about how terrible Obama is, and that's very much where Republican primary voters are, it seems to me. They really, it's all about Obama.
I take his non-candidacy, the popularity of it, as evidence that the Republicans are hungry for a guy who will fight aggressively against the president they desperately want to defeat.
I think that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And all the birther stuff, I know that MSNBC is turning this into basically a 24-hour programming opportunity. But I actually don't think that most Republican primary voters are birthers or care, really. I think they do want to hear Obama described in terms they agree with, which is as a disastrous president.
Well, I think they just like to see a guy with enough guts to take on that. I mean, whether or not they have substantively agree with him, just the fact that he would be willing to be so politically incorrect as to raise it continually is just sort of impressive at the guts level of his candidacy or non-candidacy.
Well, I agree with you completely. In fact, it's almost thrilling to watch a guy who clearly just doesn't care what his neighbors think.
That's one of the great things about billionaires is they're really afraid to say in private or in public whatever they think, and we're all going to be nice to them because we theorize that somehow maybe we'll get some of that billion.
No, that's right. Although a lot of billionaires, not that I have extensive experience with billionaires, but I've met some, tend to be hesitant to speak their mind in public.
Yeah.
Right? So, I think Trump does get credit. You can call him crazy, maybe he is, but at least he's saying exactly what he thinks. And, boy, if I were Tim Pawlenty or any of these guys, Mitch Daniels, assuming he gets in, I would take a lesson from that.
What about these Obama signing statements? You guys have a story about it this morning. We've talked a lot about it today, where he essentially, as part of the deal, as part of the budget deal, the 2011 budget deal, the $38 billion worth of cuts, the Republicans defunded the president's ability to hire czars, or the fund for that. And the president said, "Nah, you know what? I don't really care. I'm going to say that the Congress can't do that, and I'll still fund these czars."
Yeah, I would say, I know that this is a subject on which a lot of conservatives are all fired up, and, I would prefer no czars. I think as a management question, I think having all these people who are over agencies or who have duties that are not clearly defined is a bad idea. But I don't think in the end it makes that much difference one way or another. You could defund every czar and the administration would still have the same policies. Right?
Well, but it's the whole process. He said when George Bush did it was wrong, and here it is. We came to an agreement on cuts. Oh, but even though we made that deal, it doesn't really pertain to me and my budget for the executive branch. I'll go out and still hire czars.
Right. Well, this is news from nowhere. This is also the same guy who last week said he was taking the debt seriously and got up and gave a speech in which he promised to spend a lot more money than he's already been spending. Right. So clearly he hasn't received the message that people are upset about spending and that his policies are unpopular. He's forging ahead aggressively. I guess, I don't know, call me cynical, but I'm just not surprised by that. Obama's not interested in accommodation with the Republicans. He's not interested in compromise. And I think the quicker they figure that out, the better off they'll be.
All right. We'll put your outrage level at a 2 out of 10.
I would put my macro outrage level, this one goes to 11, I would say.
Okay.
But on the czars, no, it's 2.
All right, Tucker. Good to talk to you as always. We'll do it again soon.